Suguru Geto was initially one of the most promising exorcists at Tokyo Jujutsu High, as well as a close friend and partner of Satoru Gojo. Together, they represented the pinnacle of the new generation of sorcerers, powerful and nearly invincible. However, while Gojo envisioned a better world for himself and his fellow sorcerers, Geto increasingly sank under the weight of constantly dealing with curses. As his friend Gojo's power grew exponentially, Geto harbored something else within himself that would eventually lead to his downfall. An overwhelming sense of envy for not being as powerful. Thus, when a trigger was pulled, literally, everything buried inside Geto finally surfaced and took a shape. As Sigmund Freud once said, unexpressed emotions, they never die. They are buried alive and come out in the worst ways later. At this point, Geto rebels against the world of sorcerers and its ethics, beginning to act as a villain of the anime. However, Geto's actions were never impulsive, they were very calculated, almost ceremonial in nature. In other words, Geto becomes a kind of Lucifer in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. In Paradise Lost, Lucifer is described as the most beautiful and wise of angels, created by God to reflect his light to humanity. His name, derived from Latin lux, meaning light, and fere, meaning to carry, reflects this. He is the carrier of the light. And just like Lucifer, Geto, with his immense inherent potential, was meant to bring light and enlightenment to those in need. However, also like Lucifer, he becomes corrupted by distorted ideals and rebels against the established order around him. As punishment, Lucifer is cast out of paradise and sent to reign in hell. Similarly, Geto devises a plan to take revenge on the entire Jujutsu world and the humans he considers inferior, much like Lucifer. It's evident in Geto's dialogue that he expresses not only resentment, but also a strong sense of superiority and even disgust toward non-sorcerer humans, often referring to them as monkeys, creatures that, according to evolutionary theory, can really be seen as inferior or even primitive, given humanity's greater capabilities. But despite this, Geto's worldview is rooted not in logic, but in morality. Specifically, his own feelings and values, shaped by a distorted duality created in his own mind. This behavior seems closely related to what Carl Jung would call introverted feeling, FI, a function that tends to judge people and the world in black and white terms, right or wrong, good or bad, based not on facts, but on the individual's internal feelings. Geto uses those feelings to mask his own sense of inferiority, particularly in comparison to his former friend Satoru Gojo, and to justify the destructive and genocidal actions within him. This is what Freud as well would also call rationalization. Ironically, Geto uses his thoughts merely to justify the feelings he harbors, feelings rooted in distorted morality. To differentiate between ethics and morality, we can turn to Aristotle. While ethics reflects a collective valuation of what a group or a society deems good or bad, morality is more individual, tied to what a person personally values. In Geto's case, he seems to value destroying everything and everyone he considers inferior or who, in his view, betrayed him, rather than uplifting others just like Gojo strives to do. This inability to recognize the value in others is closely linked to neglecting extroverted thinking, TE, a function that helps its user devise and execute objective plans based on real-world results, not just idealistic and almost Marxist visions. Speaking of which, Karl Marx himself viewed the world through a distorted duality as well. bourgeoisie versus proletariat, the exploiters versus the exploited, the poor versus the rich. In Jungian analytical psychology, this is called a looping, where a person fixates on an introverted or extroverted function, ignoring complementary functions with this. An extrovert remains overly extroverted, never reflecting on themselves or their behaviors, while an introvert remains overly introvert, failing to see how their ideas and their introspections align with external reality. This is evident in Suguru Geto. He lives in a world of abstractions, feeling superior simply by deeming others inferior, coveting what others have, and imagining how great he would be if he possessed it. Because of this, the personality type that best fits Geto is undoubtedly INTJ, as all of his actions are based on an ideal that doesn't physically exist. He envisions a perfect world, the best possible world, as users of I introverted intuition often do. However, instead of using INTJ's auxiliary function, the extroverted thinking TE, to bring these ideals into reality, Geto ignores it completely, focusing solely on his tertiary function as a primary way of goal, the introverted feeling FI, acting first based on how and what he feels rather than what is truly practical and logical. This attitude could be changed in a simple way, by using his auxiliary function TE more. Historically, great figures with dominant TE like Napoleon Bonaparte or Julius Caesar were renowned for leading legions to victory, bringing glory to their nations, and being remembered to this day throughout history. In other words, due to his own prejudice and distorted perspective, Geto ignores what could truly make his ideal of a perfect world a reality, letting go of envy, stepping out of his internal world where he judges others as inferior, and instead sharing his ideas and ideals with others. He should see not the worst, but the best in people and what they are capable of, even teaching them how to use their abilities to align with his ideas. If he could step out of his own head, he might actually turn his inner vision into reality, instead of becoming so corrupted that he is banished from the world of sorcerers, becoming a kind of Lucifer or a fallen angel of Jujutsu Kaisen. This was the story of Suguru Geto. And that's it. This was the analysis of the character as well. Like, comment, and share with your friends. Check the link in the description if you're interested in a psychological analysis of yourself. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.